So it doesn't matter how much we teach an agent what to do, how to do it. They have all the secrets. They have all the skill set. They have it all. But if they can't manage themselves from the standpoint of being highly productive, because real estate agents are obviously 1099 independent contractors, it's all for nothing. It's all for nothing, right? And so yet again, we see another real estate agent, just one of the agents I'm coaching, bring up the thing that they struggle with the most, when it is so true. And Ben, most people aren't talking about it. And that is that first you have to become this highly disciplined person to have any shot at succeeding at a high level in real estate sales, because you don't have a boss telling you what to do, right? You're not a W-2 employee where you're punching a clock. And most people think to themselves, wow, that's what I want to do. But then when they get into real estate sales, it's the very thing that actually keeps them from succeeding. What's your first take on this issue?
Everybody gets in, just to your point. I want to get in. I want to get in for the flexibility and the freedom to do all these other things. And that is the very thing that keeps them from achieving what this career has to offer, which is a lot.
Yeah. And the thing I always tell people, it's like, your income in real estate sales is literally a direct reflection to your daily schedule. So if you actually follow or shadow a real estate agent, you just follow them around, there are very, very few that have a highly strict, highly disciplined schedule. And then you start to connect the dots. You say, okay, no, it's no surprise that most real estate agents are struggling for money. And they're struggling for money because they can't stick to any type of routine, schedule, or discipline. And what I really want to get into in this episode is this idea of people thinking that they have to, like, what do I have to do? What do I have to do? What do I have to do to be successful? It's the wrong question. The right question is, what do I have to stop doing in order to be successful? And that's really what I want to talk about, is like, what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to sacrifice? Because all I keep hearing is, I don't have time for this and I don't have time for that. And how do you get it all done? And how does an agent make 50 contacts a day? Like, that's what I just keep hearing and hearing. And then you see the same person, the exact same person, going to Starbucks 3-4 times a day, going to girls' night out or boys' night out, and going to this thing and going to that event. And it's like, man, wasn't that just the same agent that was telling us they don't have time for anything? It's just that they're not making the time. You know what I mean? So talk to me like your belief around addition by subtraction is really what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I hate to, we always talk about sports, but I'm going to do it one more time. Tom Brady, arguably not the most skilled person in the NFL. He reflected and did a little documentary, and there's something that he said in the documentary that just hit so hard. He said, if you want to beat me, you have to be willing to give up this and this and this and this and this and this. And he named all these things, because I have and I will, because I will do whatever it takes to beat you. So it's powerful.
Yeah.
What I like to look at is, okay, what are the have-tos, like the big things that I am unwilling to give up? And start with those things, put them in, right? I've used this analogy before. It comes from a great book that we've all read, but you've got these glass balls, you got these rubber balls. What things are glass and I cannot drop them, because if I do, they will break, right? Maybe it's a relationship, right? With your kids, with a spouse, whatever it might be. Or it's something in our career. But what is something I can't drop and I have to have? And then everything else that I can get rid of, that if I drop it, it'll bounce. I can pick it up later and continue with it. Because every time you look to scale, it's not doing more, it's not adding things. It's what things can I get rid of so that I can focus on one thing and go all in on it and master it to then scale my business.
That's exactly right. And it's like, it all starts with doing a time audit, right? And you nailed it. It's not about, okay, what are we going to add to your plate? Because that's not the issue. You're solving the wrong problem. When we look at productivity, oftentimes it's not because, it's because of what you are doing that is causing the problem. And so even if you were to learn the technique, the tactic, the strategy, it becomes irrelevant if you can't be focused, and that's the thing. Like the opposite of distraction is focus. In the business of real estate sales, being a real estate agent, focus is probably the biggest competitive advantage you have over every other agent in the marketplace. In a business that is filled with weapons of mass distraction, they're just filled with it, and people they're just all over the place. If you can be focused, you can really win in this business. Let's talk about distractions for a second. The other thing I often hear agents talk about is, well, dude, I have this person calling me. I've got this person calling me. All these things are coming at me. It's kind of like death by 1,000 cuts. It's all these little things that add up to, wasting a bunch of time. And this is where the discipline comes in. The discipline to say no, the discipline to do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. That's what we're talking about when we talk about discipline and focus. And most independent contractors don't have that. All they do is fulfill one urge after the next all day long. They bounce from one thing to the next on their phone, from one social media thing to their email, to the phone call, to the this, to the that. It's just death by 1,000 cuts. You don't think that the got a second, is going to be a big deal. So it's like, hey, Bob, you got a second? Yeah, sure. What's up, Joan? Well, let me tell you what happened yesterday at the kids' barbecue. And then it's just one thing after the next. It's not the one thing. It's the behavior. It's the behavior of you not being able to say, you know what, I'm right in the middle of something. Let me circle back with you, right? Yeah. And the dude forgets all about it, and you don't have to come back to it. I look at, there's a really, 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 really valuable thing that James Clear has in his newsletter. It's really good. I should actually probably bring this thing up. I'm gonna pull this up. He talks about, Ben, this yes, no, like putting a value on when you say yes and no to things, right?
Yeah.
Let me just pull this up for the audience. This will be really good. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, I will I'll read it to you. All right. But for everybody else, I'm going to share my screen and kind of walk you guys through this. All right. This is really good. This won't take long because we can really talk through this. And I think this will be really, really helpful to people. So let me share my screen and I'll show you what we're looking at. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right. So this is on James Clear's website, and it's titled "The Ultimate Productivity Hack is Saying No." And this is exactly, Ben, what I'm talking about. All right. So let me just read this short little email so people get it. So the ultimate productivity hack is saying no. Not doing something will always be faster than doing it. This statement reminds me of the old computer programming saying, remember that there is no code faster than no code. The same philosophy applies in other areas of life. For example, there is no meeting that goes faster than not having a meeting at all. And so let's talk about why we say yes. So this is so good. And then he gets into some really good stuff. Why we say yes. We agree to many requests, not because we want to do them, but because we don't want to be seen as rude, arrogant, or unhelpful. Often, you have to consider saying no to someone you will interact with again in the future, your coworker, your spouse, your friends, your family, etc. Saying no to these people can be particularly difficult because we like them and we want to support them. Not to mention, we often need their help too. Collaborating with others is an important element of life. the thought of straining the relationship outweighs the commitment of our time and energy. For this reason, it could be helpful to be gracious in your response. Do whatever favors you can and be warm-hearted and direct when you have to say no. All right, so watch this. The difference between yes and no. The words yes and no get used in comparison to each other so often that it feels like they carry equal weight in conversation. In reality, they are not just opposite in meaning, but of entirely different magnitudes of commitment. This is the craziest part. Oh, this is so good. When you say no, you are only saying no to one option. When you say yes, however, you are saying no to every other option. Let me say that one more time. When you say no, you are only saying no to one option. When you say yes, on the other hand, you're saying no to every other option. So the economist Tim Hartford puts it like this. Every time we say yes to a request, we are also saying no to anything else we might accomplish with that time. Once you have committed to something, you have already decided how the future block of that time will be spent. In other words, saying no saves you time in the future. Saying yes costs you time in the future. No is a form of time credit. You retain the ability to spend your future time however you want. Yes is a form of debt. You have to pay back your commitment at some point. No is a decision. Yes is a responsibility. All right, dude, this is so good. Like, it's exactly what's happening. You know, every time you say yes to something, big or small, it's exactly like James Clear outlines it. You know, you're committing to future debt of time that you must pay. And like saying no is kind of like a bank account. It's like you've just saved up time in the future to do something more productive. What it is going to be, who cares what it's going to be yet? What are your thoughts when you heard that?
Something popped into my head, and it relates to relationships, because I think this is often when we do it. I had the most amount of friends when I was the worst version of myself.
Wow. Interesting.
The better I get, the fewer relationships I have, because they're stronger. Because most of the time when you have a bunch of friends, I want to be liked, right? I say yes to everything, everyone. And maybe that's just a real life example of this in act. But I am a fewer people, better version of myself, right? More productive and all of that. So I don't know, but that's what really hit me hearing that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like every time we say yes to something in our business of real estate sales or friends or whatever, it's because you want to be liked.
Yeah.
It's our need for approval. And most people in real estate sales are highly ambitious and highly insecure at the same time. And so those two things kind of fight each other a lot. And so like this need for approval, this need to be liked because of the insecurity is so high that every time a lender calls them while they're prospecting, they like the feeling of being needed. So as they bitch and complain about all these distractions, they secretly like it. Oh, someone's calling me. They need me. And so they stop the thing that's actually going to make them money, in this case, prospecting, to pick up the phone from the lender when they very easily could have just called that lender back, right? They could have had a block in time in their schedule where they call people back, they return voicemails, they return emails, et cetera, et cetera. They could set up their voicemail to help carve out the time. That they don't do any of that because they like the distraction is them. You can something can only distract you if you allow it. That's the only way a thing can be a distraction. It only becomes a problem when you accept it. So if the phone is ringing, because here's the thing, the world doesn't revolve around you. The lender doesn't say to themselves, at, let's just say Bank of America is doing the mortgage, however many tens of thousands of employees they have. The tens of thousands of employees don't say, well, I'm not going to call Bob Jones at Remax. I think he's prospecting right now. No, that doesn't revolve around you. It's you, when the lender's calling you, making a decision to hit accept, versus what we coach agents to do is to not even have that phone in the same room as you're prospecting, so you don't even have to fight the impulse. It's putting a sign on your door to say, hey, prospecting in progress, please don't disturb. So you don't even have to put yourself in a position to let people down when they say, hey, you got a second? Hey, you want to run and grab a coffee? You don't even have to put yourselves in situations to say no, because we know most insecure people can't do that. What do you think?
So good. It's easy to do that, obviously. What's hard is to set the schedule, but what it does for you is it allows you to make a decision when it's not emotional, right? When you do it so far ahead of time, whether it's a schedule or some other tactical things we can talk about, to say no for your future self now, it's kind of like, I think that best way to say it is it takes the emotion out of it. In the moment, when it's emotional, when I'm in front of somebody, it's like, oh man, sorry, I've already got this thing scheduled. Whatever it is, you're not going to bail on a client closing that you've got to be at. You would say no. And if we set our days up that way, we can act all the time where we're never doing something because it's emotional in the moment. We've already made that decision ahead of time for our future self. And that, I think, is what allows us to stay on track the most.
No
Do you
doubt.
agree?
Yeah, and like from a tactical perspective, let's talk about the Pomodoro effect, or the Pomodoro Technique, rather. So this is something we often talk to agents that we work with, that they can do, right? Where, to your point, they're blocking out their calendar, and then they're associating a time with the task that they're doing to help increase their productivity. You associate a time for that, and because what happens is the brain starts to say, okay, I have 30 minutes to do this thing. And I know that after the 30 minutes, I know a break is coming up. I know that I can be less disciplined after the 30 minutes, after the 20 minutes, after the 45 minutes. And because I know that break is coming up, that the amount of focus you can have during that block of time increases dramatically. But when you try to have, this is what's unrealistic. Oh, I'm just going to be like laser beam focused for 8 hours. Dude, that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. So this is a really good technique to use, where it's like, okay, if you're going to do follow-up calls and you say, okay, I got a ton of follow-up to do. I'm going to block 45 minutes. In 45 minutes, I can be distracted. So planning for distraction as much as you are for focus is another practical thing to implement as a result of this podcast. It's like, you can schedule distraction, because in this 45 minutes, it's productivity time. Outside of your productivity blocks are time for distraction. It's time for impulse. It's time for, mental masturbation. It's just like, go ahead, search through the internet, do what you want, consume what you want. But you have these blocks of time that, if they're scheduled and there's a break coming up, it tends to work really, really well. You know what I mean?
Amen. I think about a time in my life where I would feel guilty when I was home because I wasn't working, and I would feel guilty at work because I wasn't with my family. And what I found is, when I do what's required at the time that it's required, then I can be free and truly present, I think is the word, in the moment of what I'm doing.
Yeah. And then the next tactical thing, you took the words right out of my mouth, is to work when you're supposed to, and then not work when you're not supposed to, so that two things happen. Most agents, most real estate agents are filled with guilt, because they never do what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it. So they feel like they have to be working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And they only feel like that because they're not doing what they're supposed to be when they're supposed to. And so you get totally burned out. So people aren't productive when they're supposed to be, because they're so exhausted, because they're not resting and recovering. They don't prioritize rest and recovery. And so it's like they're always on. And why are they always on? Because they're filled with guilt all the time, because they never follow a schedule. They never do what they told themselves they were going to do that day. So they're filled with guilt. So that's why you see the real estate agent on a vacation. Everyone's doing X, Y, and Z in the pool, and they're sitting there on the phone. You always know it's a realtor, right? At the barbecue, they're always walking around on the phone. You know what I mean? All the time. They can't take time off because they're filled. They know, they'll never admit this. That when everybody else is working, the rest of the world's working, they're literally like fucking around. Like they're literally not doing anything. You know what I mean? They're doing everything but be productive. That's what they're doing.
Totally. So this is a key piece too, is the people in your life, I truly believe, have to be on the same page. I don't believe, I was talking to my wife about this the other day on a walk. I was just saying, like, man, I don't believe there is such thing as work-life balance. Everybody keeps talking about this work-life balance, and somebody had just brought it up. So I brought it up to her and I wanted her opinion on it. And she goes, and she's a stay-at-home mom, takes care of our family when I'm not there. And she goes, yeah, there is no such thing as work-life balance. It doesn't exist. I was like, really? What do you mean? And he goes, yeah, it's harmony. You have to be in harmony with your spouse or your significant other. I was like, well, tell me more. So we have to be on the same page, because if you're in a season where you're like, hey, I just quit my career, I'm going all in on this thing, there isn't going to be a lot of balance. But if you have harmony, meaning you and whoever else is affected by this in your life is on the same page, then you're in harmony because the expectations are clear and they're set ahead of time. So now you can be late. You can work hard. You can respond and get after an opportunity when it arises, because everybody's on the same page. And you understand there are going to be times where you have to work 24/7. And there are going to be times once you get ahead, you earn the right to have a really strict schedule and clock out. But it's because you are in harmony with the people that it affected. And I think so often we get stuck where we get into something, we want to make all this money, we overpromise what it's actually going to take, and we don't get the results. And it's just unclear why where you are. What are you doing? Like, I don't understand why this isn't working.
Yeah, no doubt. And so I'm going to I'll leave the audience with this, like showing up for yourself. This is what I'm going to challenge the real estate agent community. Not everybody struggles with this, but the vast majority do. Okay. To your point, people are leaving careers that they despise, right? The idea of renting their life out to an employer, they're like, I can't do that. I got to work for myself. Okay, good. I love it. Here's my challenge for every real estate agent that watches or listens to the show, Ben. Are you showing up for yourself the same way you were showing up for that employer that was paying you a paycheck every 2 weeks? Because my challenge is that you're not. When I see people behave with a W-2 job, if they don't show up, they lose that paycheck, that they behave differently than they do when they work for themselves with unlimited income, which is what they told their friends, their family, their spouse for years and years and years and years that they wanted. What's going on there? Why is it that you are behaving in one way when you have a job that you say you hate, but you're showing up early, you're staying late, you're giving your all out effort, and then you leave that thing, you go and work for yourself, and we can't ever get you to show up. You never show up on time. You never show up to prospect. You never come to the office because you wanted to be your own boss. What's happening here? I'll tell you exactly the behavior that's happening here so that people are at least aware of it. Human beings, you have to be aware of this if you're in real estate. Human beings are more motivated by the fear of loss than they are at the opportunity of gain. That's as plain as simple as I can get. That's what's going on here, Ben, is the reason why somebody that's earning $80,000 a year at a job behaves so well. It's because they don't want to lose the paycheck, the 401k, the health benefits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Put that same person in a they'll get licensed, go be a realtor. They have unlimited income potential. They can earn 800,000. They never show up. They never follow a schedule. You can't get them to do anything. It's like, it's so interesting. And that's the thing I want to challenge this audience with is like, just be aware of that. How are you behaving? Remember, you just told everybody, I got to get out of this job. I hate this. I want to work for myself. Well, show up for yourself. How are you showing up?